The silence in the penthouse was not a peaceful one. It was a pressurized vacuum waiting to explode. Damien Thorne moved through the marble foyer, his footsteps echoing with the sharp, impatient click of a man who didn't just own the building, he owned the skyline it pierced. He was back a day early. A $1 trillion acquisition had closed faster than expected, and he wanted to see the look on his wife's face when she realized once again that he was a man who bent time itself to his will. He unfastened his cufflinks, the sound unnaturally loud. That's when he heard it. Not a greeting, but a sob. A choked, desperate sound that did not belong in his curated world of glass and steel. Damien's spine stiffened. He moved not with concern, but with the cold, predatory focus that had made him a billionaire. The sound was coming from the Grand Salon, the one with the panoramic views of the city that he had gifted his wife, Alara. He rounded the corner, and the world stopped. There she was, Alara, his 6 months pregnant wife, her face a mess of tears and mascara, her body trembling. But she was not alone. She was clutching desperately to his brother, Julian Thorne, the sensitive one, the family disappointment, the man who ran a bleeding heart charity instead of a hedge fund, was holding Damien's pregnant wife in his arms. His hand was splayed across her back, rubbing gentle circles, his face buried in her hair as he murmured words of comfort. Ilara's own hand, the one wearing the 10-carat diamond Damien had given her, was clutching Julian's shirt so tightly her knuckles were white. Ice, purer and colder than any winter, flooded Damien's veins. He saw it all in one sickening snapshot. The vulnerable, pregnant woman, the comforting friend. It was a portrait of intimate betrayal. Well, Damien's voice sliced through the room. It was not a shout. It was worse. It was a venomous, quiet hiss that made both of them freeze, their blood turning to ice. Ilara gasped, pulling away from Julian as if she'd been burned. She stumbled back, her hand flying to her swollen belly. Damien, you're home. Clearly, Damien said, his eyes not leaving Julian's. He stalked into the room, his presence sucking all the air out. Touching moment. Should I have brought a camera? Or perhaps I should just call my lawyers. Damien, it is not what you think, Julian said immediately, stepping forward, his hands raised placatingly. He was the only person on earth who still spoke to Damien without fear, and Damien despised him for it. Oh, I know exactly what I think, Damien sneered, finally turning his gaze on Alara. He raked his eyes over her, from her tear-stained face to the pronounced swell of her stomach. I think I find my wife, who is carrying my heir, crying in the arms of my charity case brother. It's pathetic. It's common. I expected better from you, Alara. But then you can't take the gutter out of the girl, can you? It was a cruel, calculated strike. Alara was from a modest background, a fact Damien loved to remind her of, as if her entire life had been an audition to be his wife. The words hit Alara, but something else was happening. The tears stopped. The trembling in her hands, which had been born of sorrow, was now calcifying into a cold, hard rage. The shift was immediate. The virtuous, humble victim vanished. You monster, she whispered, her voice shaking with a new, terrifying intensity. Damien laughed, a short barking sound. That's rich. I'm the monster? I walk in on this cheap, sordid affair. Affair? Alara's laugh was brittle, broken. You think this is about an affair? You arrogant, blind fool. You see this? You see him. Because it's the only thing your tiny, selfish mind can comprehend. She shoved past Julian, her eyes locked on Damien. I was crying, Damien. Yes, I was sobbing. I was in agony, but not because of Julian. I was crying because of you. Damien's smirk wavered, replaced by confusion. This was not the script he knew. He expected hysteria, denials, begging. He did not expect defiance. I was crying, Ilara continued, her voice rising, Because of a phone call I received 1 hour ago. From my mother. She held up her phone, her hand shaking. On the screen was a breaking news alert. A dry headline from a financial journal. Thorn Industries cements land deal. Forces immediate liquidation of community. Hope Pediatric Clinic. Damien's face remained blank, but a flicker of recognition appeared in his eyes. He knew the clinic. My father's clinic. Alara's voice cracked, but not with sadness. With acid. The clinic he built. The clinic I poured every last cent of my inheritance into long before I met you. The one that serves the neighborhood I came from. It was a sound business decision, Damien said dismissively, waving his hand. The land was undervalued. They refused to sell. They refused to sell because it was a clinic, you sociopath. Not a line item on your balance sheet, she screamed. You knew. I begged you to leave it alone. I told you it was all I had left of him. And I told you, Damien bit back, that sentiment is a weakness. It was a bad investment. I did you a favor. I erased your messy little past. You erased... Alara took a sharp, painful breath, one hand flying to her stomach again as a visible cramp seized her. She doubled over, gasping. Julian lunged forward. Alara, the baby. Damien, stop this. Can't you see she's in pain? Pain, Damien spat. She's faking it. A classic manipulative display. It's not fake. Alara cried out, gripping the arm of a sofa to stay upright. The pain was real, sharp, and terrifying. The call from my mother. She told me what you did. The shock. The stress. I started cramping. The doctor said I am in preterm labor, Damien. I called Julian because I was scared. Because I couldn't reach you. I was crying because I thought I was losing our baby. Because you were too busy destroying my father's legacy to answer your phone. The accusation hung in the air, heavy and toxic. Julian stared at his brother, his face pale with horror. You knew what that clinic meant to her. You knew she was high risk. You did this anyway. Damien Thorn was silent. He was for the first time in his life completely blindsided. He had walked in expecting to play the role of the cuckolded husband. He was prepared for lies about an affair. He was not prepared for this. He was not prepared for his wife, his acquisition, to stand there in agony, accusing him of something so true. Alara straightened up, the pain etched on her face, but her eyes were dry. They were burning. You came in here, Damien, looking for a betrayal, she panted. You were so desperate to find me in the arms of another man. You couldn't wait to be the victim. You couldn't wait to humiliate me. She took one steadying step toward him. You missed the real betrayal, the one you committed. And you just exposed the one thing that will break you. Damien stared. What are you talking about? You have nothing. I have everything, Alara whispered. You think destroying that clinic broke me? No, you just signed your own death warrant. You just reminded me who I was before I met you. And you just gave me the one thing I was missing. And what, Damien sneered, is that? Alara smiled. A cold, terrifying sight on her tear-streaked face. A motive. The words hung in the sterile, luxurious air, as sharp and cold as the glass skyline behind them. Damien Thorn's face for a fleeting second was a mask of pure, unadulterated shock. The script had been flipped. He was no longer the accuser. He was the accused. But a lifetime of invincibility slammed back into place almost immediately. He laughed. It was a sound devoid of all humor, a dry, metallic rasp. A motive, he repeated, tasting the word with contempt. A motive for what? To write a tell-all memoir? To file for divorce? Go ahead, Alara. My prenuptial agreement is an iron fortress. You'll walk out of here with nothing. Less than nothing. I will drag your name through so much mud you'll drown in it. And the baby, he gestured cruelly to her stomach. My lawyers will prove you're an unfit, hysterical, and, as of 10 minutes ago, adulterous mother. I will keep my son, and you will never see him again. He expected this to be the killing blow. He expected the tears, the collapse, the begging. He got nothing. Ilara's face, pale and taut with pain, remained locked on his. The contraction had passed, leaving her trembling but upright. "You still don't get it," she whispered, and the calmness in her voice was 1,000 times more terrifying than her screams. "You're still playing the old game. You're talking about money. You're talking about custody. You think this is about our marriage? You're wrong. This is about your ending. Damien, for God's sake, she's in labor," Julian roared, finally finding his voice. He had been staring at his brother as if seeing him for the first time. A hollowed-out monster. "Whatever this is, it can wait. We have to get her to a hospital." "Stay out of this, Julian," Damien snapped, pointing a finger. "This is what she does. She's a manipulator. This is a performance. Look at her." The tears are gone. The pain has magically subsided now that her lover is here to defend her. The pain is not gone. Ilara bit out, gripping her stomach as another wave of agonizing cramps radiated through her. She gritted her teeth, her breath hissing. "It's just a very good reminder of why I'm doing this. I'm not going to a hospital. Not yet." "Ilara, don't be insane," Julian pleaded, moving toward her. "I'm not," she panted, holding up a hand to stop him. She locked eyes with her husband. "I'm not going anywhere until he understands. You need to understand what you've done, Damien. Not just to me. Not just to my father's clinic. But to yourself." Damien folded his arms, a sneer of bored arrogance on his face. "Enlighten me. I have 5 minutes before I call security and have you both thrown out." You destroyed that clinic," Ilara said, her voice shaking with the effort of standing. "You bulldozed my father's memory. You called it a bad investment. You thought you were just cleaning up a messy past. But you're so blinded by your own ego you never even stopped to ask who my father was." Damien shrugged. "Some bleeding heart doctor in the slums. Who cares? My father," Ilara said, each word a perfectly placed stone, "was Dr. Eris Thorne's personal physician. Your father's doctor, before he was forced into retirement. Before he opened that slum clinic to atone for the things he'd seen." The blood drained from Damien's face. The sneer, the arrogance, the power, it all evaporated, leaving behind a raw, primal fear. He was no longer a billionaire titan. He was a cornered animal. "You're lying," he hissed. "Am I?" Ilara shot back. "You thought he was just some nobody. You never bothered to look into my past, did you? You just saw a pretty pliable girl from the wrong side of the tracks. You never realized I was the daughter of Dr. Elias Vance, the one man who knew the truth about your family." Julian looked between them, his expression one of deep, dawning horror. "Damien, what is she talking about? What truth?" "Shut up, Julian," Damien yelled, his control shattering. He lunged toward Ilara, not to strike her, but to intimidate, to silence her. "What did he tell you? What's in those files?" "So you do know about the files," Ilara said, smiling that cold, terrible smile again. "You did know. This whole land deal, this whole liquidation. It wasn't about the money. It was about those. You were trying to get into his old office. You were trying to destroy them, just like you destroyed everything else that threatened you." "What files?" Damien roared, his voice echoing off the glass. "My father wasn't just a doctor. He was a man of science. He was meticulous," Ilara said, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper, forcing Damien to lean in, a puppet on her string. He kept notes. He kept recordings. He kept everything, especially on his most volatile patients. He was deeply troubled by your father's accidental overdose. He found it suspicious. My father's death was ruled an accident. Was it? Ilara taunted. Or was it just ruled? My father knew your father was in perfect health. A little depressed, perhaps, but not suicidal. But he was planning on changing his will. He was planning on cutting you out. He was planning on giving control of the company to Julian. Julian staggered back as if struck. What? No. That's not. It is, Ilara said, never taking her eyes off Damien. My father had the original toxicology report. The one that was lost. The one that showed the real cause of death. He had the security logs from the estate that night. He had a recorded deposition from a nurse you paid off. He had everything. Damien Thorne was pale, his breathing ragged. He was broken. This was it, the moment she had exposed what would truly break him. You can't prove any of that. He stammered, his empire crumbling in his mind. The clinic is gone. The files are gone. It's just your word against mine. Oh, Damien, Ilara said, and for the first time she sounded almost sad. You really are a fool. You think I'd be telling you this if the files were still in that building? You think my father, the paranoid old man, kept his only insurance policy in his office? No. She clutched her stomach as another contraction, sharper this time, ripped through her. She cried out a genuine piercing sound of agony. Julian. Now. It's time, she gasped. Julian, snapping out of his shock, rushed to her side, scooping her arm over his shoulder. He glared at Damien with a hatred so pure it was almost holy. You did this, you killed our father. It's a lie. She's lying. Damien screamed, but it was the desperate, weak cry of a guilty man. Am I? Ilara panted as Julian helped her toward the door. You're right about one thing. The clinic's liquidation did do something. It triggered the release of my father's will. And with it, instructions for his lawyer. Those files, they weren't in the clinic, Damien. They've been in a bank vault for 20 years. And as we speak, they are being delivered, Damien froze. Delivered? To who, the press? The police? I can buy them. I can stop this. Ilara paused at the doorway, turning to look at her husband, the great billionaire titan, now just a pathetic, terrified man in a glass cage. No, Damien, you can't buy this person. You can't threaten them. You can't do anything, she said, her voice weak with pain but strong with victory. They're not being delivered to the police. They're being delivered to the one person you've spent your entire life trying to destroy, the one person who has nothing left to lose. Your mother. The name landed in the opulent room with the dead thud of a casket lid closing. Damien Thorne's world, which had been fracturing for the last 10 minutes, finally shattered into a million irreparable pieces. The police he could buy, the press he could spin. His mother, Cornelia Thorne, she was the one person on earth who had seen his darkness from the beginning. She was the one he had systematically discredited, isolated and broken after his father's death, painting her as a grieving, hysterical widow who couldn't accept the accident. She was the only person who would instantly believe every word in those files. No, he whispered. It was not a denial. It was a plea. Ilara gave him a look of profound, cold pity. Yes. She doubled over, a sharp, agonizing cry escaping her lips. The baby was coming. Julian didn't hesitate. He swept her up, his brother's monstrous revelation giving him a strength he never knew he possessed. He kicked open the penthouse door. You're done, Damien. Julian spat, his voice thick with a lifetime of repressed disgust. You're not a brother. You're not a son. You're a cancer. And Ilara just found the cure. They were gone. The slam of the door echoed in the penthouse, the final definitive sound of his life ending. For 1 second, Damien was paralyzed, trapped in the horrifying silence. Then the panic hit him like a physical blow. He lunged for his phone, his fingers fumbling, his cold, perfect control gone. He was just a terrified boy again, caught in a lie. He dialed his mother's private number. It rang. Once. Twice. Voicemail. No. He threw the phone across the room, where it shattered against a floor-to-ceiling window, the spiderweb crack a perfect mirror of his sanity. He sprinted to his desk, slamming his fist on the intercom. Security, get me Harrison! His head of security, a man paid a king's ransom to make problems disappear, answered instantly. Sir, my mother? Where is my mother? Damien roared, pacing like a caged wolf. Stop all deliveries to her estate. Do you hear me?
All of them.
I don't care what you have to do, lock it down. There was a hesitant pause on the line. Mr. Thorne, your mother. She isn't at the estate. What? Damien's blood ran cold. It's Tuesday, sir. It's the annual Thorne Foundation Gala. The one you were meant to co-host. She's at the Grand Imperial Ballroom. She's been there for hours. The public, humiliation. The gala from Alara's plan. It wasn't a metaphor, it was literal. It was happening now. The delivery, Damien choked out, his throat tightening. A lawyer, a package. Find him, stop him. Sir, I'm looking at the security logs for the ballroom now. Harrison's voice was strained, terrified to deliver the news. A bonded courier made a priority delivery to Mrs. Thorne's private holding room. 45 minutes ago. It was too late. Damien Thorne didn't even grab his keys. He sprinted from the penthouse barefoot on the cold marble and slammed the button for his private elevator. The descent was torture. Every floor felt like a year. His reflection in the mirrored walls showed a man he didn't recognize, a sweaty, wild-eyed, frightened man, simultaneously. Across the city, an ambulance-like wail split the night, but it wasn't an ambulance. It was Julian's black sedan, weaving through traffic at impossible speeds. Alara was in the passenger seat, her eyes squeezed shut, her knuckles white as she gripped the dashboard, panting through another brutal contraction. Just breathe. Alara, we're almost there, Julian said, his voice a strange mix of terror and exhilaration. The hospital, she gasped. Not the hospital, Julian said, his eyes fixed on the road. Not yet. We have one more stop. He glanced at his phone, mounted on the dash. A new text message glowed. Package delivered, CT is secure. Julian's hand went to Alara's shoulder. He knows, Alara, he knows about the package. He's on his way to the gala. The trap is set. Alara's eyes opened, shining with tears of pain, but also with the fire of pure, unadulterated vindication. Good, she whispered. Let him run. Let the whole world watch. Damien burst from the elevator, shoving past his own baffled doorman. He didn't wait for his car. He hijacked the nearest limousine idling by the curb, throwing the shocked driver out. Get out, Thorne business. He tore through the city, a billionaire committing a carjacking. His entire life reduced to a single desperate race against a truth that had been buried for 20 years. He screeched to a halt in front of the Grand Imperial, a building bearing his family's name. He left the car in the middle of the street. Security guards, recognizing him, rushed forward. Mr. Thorne, are you all right? He shoved them aside. Where is she? He didn't wait for an answer. He knew where she'd be. The private backstage holding room. The one she used to prepare for her speech. He crashed through the velvet ropes past the champagne-sipping elite who turned to stare, their polite chatter dying. They saw not a titan of industry, but a madman. He found the door. Private Seathorne. He heard a sound from within. A small, sharp, feminine gasp. A sound of utter horror. He slammed the door open. Cornelia Thorne was standing in the center of the room. She was an image of aristocratic ice, her silver hair perfectly coiffed, her diamonds glittering. But her face was a mask of absolute soul-shattering ruin. The simple manila-wrapped box from the lawyer was open on her vanity. She wasn't reading a file. She was holding a small, ancient micro-cassette recorder to her ear. She was listening. As Damien burst in, she pulled it away, her hand trembling so violently the recorder almost fell. She stared at her son. Her eyes were not sad. They were dead. And in the silence of the room, the tinny, awful sound from the recorder was still audible. A man's voice. Their father. No, Damien, please. What's in the syringe? What did you give me? Son, please. And then a second voice, younger, colder, utterly without emotion. Damien's own. You were weak, father. The company needed a real leader. It's just a hostile takeover. Damien froze. Mother, she whispered. The word was not an accusation. It was a verdict. He lunged, a primal scream tearing from his throat. Give it to me. It's a fake. She's lying. He was too late. His lunge was clumsy, desperate. He didn't grab the recorder. He grabbed her. He shoved her, and she stumbled back, crashing into the small lectern at the side of the room. The lectern was where she prepared for her speech. The microphone on it was live. A blast of high-pitched feedback, loud as a gunshot, shrieked through the ballroom, silencing the orchestra, silencing the 500 guests. Every head turned to the main stage where the speakers were now broadcasting the private horror of the holding room. In the dead, agonizing silence, the microcassette, still playing in Cornelia's hand, was suddenly audible to everyone. Damien's cold young voice echoed through the hall, amplified 1,000 times. A hostile takeover. The words, spoken in Damien's own cold youthful voice, echoed through the cavernous ballroom, amplified by the live microphone. The feedback shriek had died, leaving only the tinny, damning confession hanging in the dead, pressurized silence. 500 of the city's most powerful elite, bankers, politicians, socialites, and rivals, were frozen, their champagne glasses halfway to their lips, their eyes wide with a horrified, electric fascination. Damien Thorne stood paralyzed in the doorway of the holding room. He saw it all. The sea of faces, the smartphones slowly being raised, the way his rivals were already exchanging predatory glances. His entire life, his carefully constructed illusion of power, had just been atomized by a 20-year-old microcassette. He looked at his mother. Cornelia Thorne, her face a pale mask of tragedy, was still holding the recorder. She took one step toward the lectern, her hand shaking. She leaned in, and her whisper was a sonic boom in the silent room. He killed my husband, she said, her voice cracking, broadcasting to every speaker. My son Damien, he murdered his father. He poisoned him. The ballroom erupted. It wasn't a sound of sympathy. It was a sound of chaos, a tidal wave of gasps, screams, and the furious murmur of the greatest scandal in a generation breaking wide open. This was it. The public downfall. No, Damien roared, the word tearing from his throat. He was no longer a billionaire. He was a cornered animal. He lunged, not for his mother, but for the stage, for the exit. He burst from the holding room onto the main stage, lit by the bright, unforgiving spotlights. The man who had lived his life in the shadows, pulling strings, was now completely exposed. He stumbled over a speaker, his $5,000 shoe catching, and he fell to his knees in the center of the stage. The crowd gasped again, the invincible Damien Thorne, pathetic and on all fours. He scrambled up, his eyes wild. It's a lie. She's senile. She's hysterical. It's a setup. He pointed into the crowd, his fingers shaking. It was her, Ilara. She's lying. But the crowd only shrank from him, parting as he staggered off the stage, not in fear but in a wave of collective, delicious disgust. They were shunning him. This was not a jury. It was a verdict. His social and financial execution was happening in real time. He pushed through the velvet ropes, shoving a duchess aside, his mind blank except for one thought. Escape. He reached the grand marble foyer, the exit doors just yards away. They slid open. But it wasn't a path to freedom. Standing there were two uniformed police officers, and just behind them Julian. Damien froze. His entire body went cold. Julian hadn't just brought Ilara. He had brought the law. Damien Thorne, the officer said, his voice devoid of any of the deference Damien was used to. We received a call regarding a confession to a homicide. You can't, Damien stammered, looking at his brother. Julian, you traitor. It's over, Damien, Julian said, his voice hard as steel. It's been over for 20 years. You have no proof. Damien shrieked, his voice echoing in the foyer. We have this, the officer said, holding up a small identical micro-cassette recorder. Mrs. Thorne's courier made 2 stops. One to her, and one to us. We have the full unedited recording. You are under arrest for the murder of Heiress Thorne. Damien's face collapsed. The final trap. The files were the bait, but the tape was the kill shot. No! He screamed and he lunged, not for the exit but at Julian. He never made it. The officers were on him in an instant, twisting his arms behind his back with a brutal, practiced efficiency. Damien cried out as his shoulder was wrenched. The cold click of steel echoed as the handcuffs snapped shut around his wrists. It was in that moment, as he was held powerless, that he saw her. Ilara was standing by the main doors, leaning heavily on a paramedic Julian must have called, her face sheet white with pain. But her eyes were on him. They were clear, burning, and victorious. You, he spat the venom of a dying snake. He strained against the officer's grip. You did this. You whore. You ruined me. Ilara took one painful step forward. The paramedic tried to stop her, but she held up a hand. She looked at the pathetic, broken man in handcuffs, the man who had tried to destroy her. No, Damien, she said, her voice quiet but carrying over the chaos. You were already ruined. You were a monster long before you met me. She took a sharp, painful breath, her hand going to her belly. You just forgot that monsters, eventually, are dragged into the light. You did this to yourself. I'll kill you. He screamed as the police began to drag him out. I'll kill all of you. As he was hauled past the threshold, a final ghost-like figure appeared. His mother. Cornelia stood watching him be taken. She said nothing. Her face was blank. She simply watched her son, the murderer, disappear into the night, the flash of police lights painting the marble red and blue. Ilara gasped, her knees buckling. Julian, the baby. I've got you, Julian said, rushing to her side, scooping her up as the paramedic brought a gurney. It's over. It's finally over. You're safe. 6 months later, the sun streamed through the window, not of a cold penthouse, but of a warm, bright nursery. Ilara, looking radiant and peaceful, rocked a small, sleeping baby in her arms. The door opened and Julian walked in. He wasn't wearing a billionaire's armor. He looked relaxed, happy. The board meeting just finished, he said, his voice soft. He held up a file. It's official. With Mother's voting shares and the morality clause in the charter, we've taken full control. Damien is scrubbed from the company. Forever. Ilara looked up, a small, genuine smile on her face. And the clinic? First order of business, Julian smiled. The Dr. Elias Vance Memorial Pediatric Clinic is fully funded. We broke ground this morning, and we've pledged to build 10 more across the country. Ilara's eyes filled with tears, but this time they were silent tears of joy. She looked down at her son. And him? Julian's smile faded, replaced by a look of grim justice. He pled guilty. The tape was irrefutable. He'll die in prison. He lost everything. His name, his company, his freedom, his family. He's nothing, Ilara. Just a name on a cell. Ilara nodded, a single tear rolling down her cheek and landing on the baby's blanket. She looked up at Julian, the man who had comforted her, who had believed her, who had helped her find justice. It's over, she whispered. We're finally free. Julian reached out, his hand gently touching the baby's head. A new beginning, he said. For all of us. Ilara leaned her head against his arm, closing her eyes, safe at last. The cycle of cruelty finally broken by the one thing Damien Thorne never believed in, the truth. What did you think of Ilara's incredible plan for justice? Did Damien get the ending he deserved? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. This is the kind of story we love to tell, where the arrogant are brought low and the virtuous find their victory. If you love stories of ultimate karmic revenge, don't forget to like this video, share it with someone who needs to see justice served, and subscribe for more.